Stephen Lewis was a great foil for me, really, you know, and I was always getting up his back, and he had this wonderful thing. He was a marvellous character. Oh God, Butler, I hate you. I hate you. And I sometimes couldn't stop myself laughing at him, you know. And it's a strange thing because he got that catchphrase, if you like, when we were filming at Wood Green.
London buses wouldn't have them at first, and they said, we got a letter back from them saying they feared it might damage their image. And we framed the letter and hung it in the producer's room. We had to go to this other grey-green thing out in the East End of London, bus line, and running out into Essex. And we had a lovely tea in the afternoon with the boss of the company, sitting in their canteen with all of our cast and everybody for the start to work. And he said to us at the time, don't be too hard on the management, he said. We've had some trouble with the workers here, he said, for the last 3 months, he said. So, you know, he said, I know it's all right for you, he said, but don't be too hard on us.
Stephen was standing with the real inspector, and there was the bus there. When we had the green buses, which are the Wood Green buses, and we used to stick when we were going to work at Luxton and District, like with Vaseline, so you put it on there like that. And he's standing there, Stephen's standing next to the inspector, and we're just about to shoot, and this big shop steward he was come along. He said, "What's all this going on?" He said, "I've got a bus to get out here," and he ripped this thing off. This other inspector said, "Oh God, I hate him. I hate him." He said, and that's where Blakey got it from.
When we started filming, they used to shout over the top when we were told to be quiet and all this sort of thing and give us trouble. And it was only when the first episode started going out, by the time the third episode went out, they were over the moon. They saw then it was a comedy and they liked it so much, and that was then it clicked.
Out of sheer luck, our TV director, Stuart Allen, had been working in Stratford East on Mrs. Wilson's diary. Yeah. He said, there's a guy there who plays a policeman, he'll do it. And it was Stephen Lewis. He had about one line in the show, that's all. Yeah. But he got more and more popular, and now he's been in the last of Summer Wine. It really launched him. But more or less, he plays a variation of the inspector. I don't think he could do much else, but that's good enough.
Blakey, Stephen Lewis was Blakey. You all just love to hate him.
Yes, you called him Stephen, and he was very approachable. I remember I had my girlfriend at the time was a big fan, and her mother was doing some charity thing, and she said, "Oh, because they knew I was working here, and they wanted Stephen Lewis, but they could possibly open their fate for them." And I had to approach him about this. I felt really uncomfortable anyway, because you don't really want to put people in certain positions. I sort of just mentioned it to him. I said, you know, would you be interested in? And he went, well, it's not really the sort of thing I do, really. But he very nicely read the letter, which was from her, and apparently he did reply to it saying he was unavailable. But I could see when I handed it to him, he was going, "Oh, no, I don't do this sort of thing at all."
Him and Bob Grant both came from the Joan Littlewood Theatre, and right at the start, it wasn't intended he'd have a big part to play in it, but because he was so good, he got involved more and more because of the way he was and the character he was and the frustration, and they realised that there was good chemistry again, that Jack and Stan could fight against Blakey and he'd fight back, and he made for a good authority figure.
Oh yes. Well, of course, he hated them and they hated him, and that was the whole point. Anything they could do to annoy him or to be, to make it difficult for him, and they would do it.
It worked very well, because he was a poor guy always, and he got better as he went along, because I only had one line or two at the very beginning of the TV show. Then he improved a lot as an actor, and in the film he was very good indeed.
Well, he's very good because his big visual is being harassed and being upset, and of course he was that all the time.
Well, I think Blakey was a character who was a bloke who'd been very successful in what he ever did, And he also was a guy who didn't want to be just bullying them. He wanted to run a proper service for the public. And these people were taking liberties all the time. There were people waiting at bus stops who needed to get to work, do things like that. And they were mucking about and stopping that from happening. So I was seeing that they did their job properly, you know, that was that sort of guy. And as I say, when I was in the army, in my mind, I was able to really get them going, but I didn't have that same authority now, so it was just frustration all the time. Oh, so did I get back now. I'll get you. Oh, I'd have you.
Stephen Lewis and Bob Grant had both come from the Joan Littlewood stable, so they could create anything. And I think Stephen was absolutely hysterical because he would be given a line saying, "Oh no," and that would develop into a series, you know, "Oh no, 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 but," and I mean, it was just extraordinary. He built his part from nothing to more or less the second lead in the show.
Bob Grant and I wrote a number of them together. We wrote 7 of the episodes. You know, they were from things that happened in real life, you know, extraordinary. Because one was a vicar lived near to me where I was, and a young fella, and he said to me one day, my father used to work on the buses, he said, at some place in some city, I won't mention where, you know. So I said, oh, he said, yes, he said, well, things happened there. He said, one night, he said, so one of the guys had trouble, he said, with his wife. He was busting up, he said, and he said he had to leave home and go off another place, and he said he didn't have the money to keep this house going and that one going. He said, so one of the mates said to him, "You've got to shift some of your furniture." So he said, yes. So he said, "We'll do it on a bus." And this really happened. They went back after the bus depot closed and took one of the buses out because he had a key and used the bus to do it. So we did an episode like that and wrote it down and I did that. And I was out late with some friends and I saw suddenly a bus going past. I said, "That's late, isn't it? He's supposed to be finished by now." So we jumped in this car and followed it. And when we got to this house where it stopped outside, there was all furniture on the back when they were getting it off. And I came round the corner and caught him. You can't beat the real experiences.
So as well as making episodes and making films, to capitalise even more on the success of the show and the films, several of the actors, including Anna Karen and Stephen Lewis, appeared in a stage show in Torquay in the summer of 1973 called Busman's Holiday. It wasn't called On the Buses, and it wasn't allowed to use On the Buses because it wasn't actually an official On the Buses franchise and there wasn't official permission given, and it wasn't actually written by the On the Buses writers. It was written by the well-known comedy writer Sam Cree. But they did very well in Torquay. Again, people wanted to come and see the people who had effectively been in On the Buses. So the actors were really busy, literally milking everything they could out of the popularity of this very, very successful comedy.
Well, you knew who he was straight away. He didn't need to say anything. He was Blakey, wasn't he? You
well,
know,
when he went to character, yeah, which he didn't mind doing, apparently.
He
did. He would quite happily drop into character, just like that, quite happily to fans and everybody else.
I hate you, but I hate you. Not as much as I hate you. Yeah. I'll get you. I'll get you. I'll get you yet.